Hi, I'm Edwin Rutsch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I want to welcome you all to the third Empathy Trainers Salon. And we have four very experienced empathy experts and trainers here. They're going to share their experiences, their insights for methods of teaching empathy, and a little bit of an overview of what we're going to do. We're going to have each presenter is going to have 10 minutes to present their work. And then it's going to be followed by 10 minutes of Q&A from the rest of the participants. And then once we've had all the presentations, we're going to have 30 minutes of discussion around how might we work together to build a comprehensive empathy training program online. And this salon is meant to build momentum for building and launching an online empathy training wiki project, which is a big project we're working on together. And it's also meant to network trainers, have them share resources and explore new methods together. I'll be the facilitator and timekeeper, and you'll each get a little bit of a warning when you're about a minute warning when your time is up. And we're going to start real quick here with just a quick 15 to 30-second introduction of each of our participants. Sascha, would you like to start?
Yes, gladly. Hello. I'm feeling very honored and happy to be here. And Edwin was so kind to invite me also to the Empathy Literature Review, which I really enjoyed, and I'm really looking forward to today's session. I'm here situated in Berlin, Germany, and I'm part of the Academy for Empathy. Although we are existing for 2 years now, actually we we are also in the progress of in the making, so to speak. Personally, I'm a trainer and coach. I've been doing that for the last 10 years.
Sascha, I just wanted to do a quick introduction.
A quick introduction,
30
okay.
Seconds. You'll get full 10 minutes to really present yourself in depth. Lou?
Okay.
Thank you, Edwin. My name is Lou Agosta. I am here because I'm the author of 3 books on empathy, high-end scholarly academic publications. My PhD in philosophy, completed many years ago, was entitled Empathy and Interpretation. My project is to expand empathy in the community. I acknowledge your empathy. Glad to be here.
Okay, thank you, Lou. Kathy?
I'm Dr. Kathy McGuire. I got a PhD at the University of Chicago in the 1970s, and I worked directly with Eugene Gendlin, who has created a self-help technique called focusing, which Edwin and I are now calling self-focusing, self-empathy focusing. And I have spent 40 years starting empathy focusing groups similar to the empathy circles that Edwin is doing.
Okay, thank you. Andrea?
Yes, I'm Andrea Cohen, and I have been teaching the work of compassionate listening for many, many years, and I look forward to sharing with you what kind of experiential skills we try to impart with people, and I look forward to having a conversation about all of what you do and what I do.
Great, thank you. Well, this is really an esteemed panel here, group, so I'm so pleased that you are all joining us today. And we have our first presenter is Lou, and Lou, you'll have 10 minutes to present, and I'll keep track of the time, and then we'll have 10 minutes Q&A, and I've got a slide here too, just let me know. And so take it away, Lou.
Thank you, Edwin. And once again, if you ask 10 people what is empathy, and I did some survey work in this in the classes that I teach at the Illinois School of Professional Psychology at Argosy, majority, there actually is a trend. Most people will say that empathy is compassion. Oftentimes people end up describing altruism, helping, intervening where people are in need, and what I actually want to say today is, heavens knows, the world needs more compassion. It's on a short list of things of which the world needs more. And I am about to propose that it is distinct from empathy. In other words, I'm going to give you the result of my 10 minutes, and I'm now almost 2 minutes into it. I'm going to actually try and define empathy succinctly in its what I consider its 4 different aspects. I'm going to propose a multidimensional definition of empathy, and I want to preface this by saying this is not the truth with a capital T. Consider the possibility that this may bring something to our work in psychotherapy, in empathy consulting, in education, in all of those situations in which people are in relatedness. So that's the context of the conversation. And this definition, the only one on this call and this conversation, this definition constrains, is me. I have, however, found it useful, and I offer it for your consideration. So with that in mind, I mean, I want to give people, in effect, freedom to say whatever they have to say and to understand the subject however they wish to understand and contribute to it. And here is my contribution. So Edwin, if you would please cue up that slide. It's not that I'm not great to look at. Here we go. So this is, I'm going to actually, yeah, that's it, you've got it. This is a 4-part, the 4 phases of a single process of empathic relatedness in 4 words: openness, understanding, interpretation, and responsiveness. And it's great the way the slide, you know, we'll just work with that. It zooms in and zooms out and blinks back at us. So we've got, you know, 4 words, 4 bullets in effect: openness, understanding, interpretation, and responsiveness. So basically, what I'm going to do is go through these 4 phases and then come back in more detail. And where this gets powerful and, I suggest, useful, in each of the phases, empathy can break down and be incomplete and go off the rails. And one gets a different, one gets, in effect, at each of these breakdowns an access to a breakthrough. So oftentimes, breakdown gives us access to a breakthrough. Okay, so that, watch for that to happen. And so in receptivity, that's at the top. That's, in effect, at noontime if this were a clock. And we're going to go counterclockwise. In receptivity, one person is open to the emotions, the affects, expressions of life of the other person. If, for example, when a baby cries in distress, most humans cannot help but sit up and take notice. A baby's cry will wake most people out of the deepest sleep, whether or not they're parents, and especially if there are parents. And this is where, in the matter of openness, receptivity, vicarious experience, in that aspect, this is where the definition of Heinz Kohut, 1971, the analysis of the self, this is where his definition of vicarious introspection fits in. We don't merge with the other. Rather, we have a vicarious experience of the other's upset or happiness or whatever the other individual is going through. Arguably, there is a physiological basis for such resonance at the biological level between biological organisms. We are biologically related. The myth is that we're unrelated. It's a myth we're unrelated. We can't not relate. Now, one can insert physiology and neurons and a story. Whether or not mirror neurons exist, there has to be a biological implementation to this, an awareness. So I have no commitment in the matter of mirror neurons. I mean, there could well be some, you know, how about plain association between organisms? Okay, so that's where we get openness. Now, what do we do with this experience? What do we do with this vicarious experience I have? In effect, your life is a movie to me. And I experience it as I would as a work of art or a piece of theater or a movie or a radio play. And the next phase, so I take what I experience and I process it further by means of empathic understanding. There, the aspect of empathic understanding that I want to highlight here is acknowledgement and commitment and recognition of the other person's humanity and what is possible for the other person. So, for example, One says one is committed to social justice but spends all one's time and energy on automatic pilot and politics in one's corporate or academic job and doesn't contribute to the community. We live in an understanding of what's possible, whether we explicitly call it out or not. And so even if one does so inauthentically and self-deceptively, the world corresponds to our commitments and we produce results correlative to our commitments in the world. It's the ultimate constraint into which we live, even more so than the limits imposed by external circumstances such as schedule and finances. Heavens knows there are plenty of those. So we take the openness, we consider what's possibility, and then we lay on, in effect, an interpretation, as if I were the other person, the other individual, with her or his circumstances, with whatever I understand of his or her personality. What size I have to walk in the moccasins, but with the other person's feet, right? I take a, here's the top-down empathy. I put myself in the other person's position, perspective, point of view, but I try to do so as best I can. This is an empirical, in effect, quasi-scientific undertaking. Who is this other person really, so that I know where her or his shoes pinch, right? The pain, the pinching, the other person's foot size and shape, and that's their character, gives me a sense of where the shoes pinch or chafe. The pain points me, if it is pain, it gives me access to the benefit of walking the walk. So empathic interpretation distinguishes and, in effect, quarantines, word of the day, splits off my own beliefs, desires, emotional reactions in the interest of being as fully present with the other as possible, as a first person relating to a second person. So the boundaries between the self and the other are clear here, but without filters, judgments, evaluations, without diagnostic labels. There's a boundary, a distinction. So moving right along here, I'm burning up the time pretty rapidly. I think I've got about 4 more minutes. It's going to be tight. The fourth phase, basically, is empathic responsiveness. So having been open and understanding of possibility and considering from an as-if point of view what it's like to be the other, then I get an opportunity to respond. Yes, a gracious and generous listening is a response. It's a powerful response. But sometimes one may usefully say something to the other, right? To demonstrate my understanding, to further the relatedness. So, I mean, it's paradoxical. The way empathy comes into language is as listening, is as what some colleagues of mine have called a gracious and generous listening. I've just borrowed that material. It's a great thing when you can get in the zone and do that. And that in itself shifts stuff. But then still I have to speak. And the way empathy comes into language oftentimes is as a narrative which gives back to the other person their experience. So the other hears in my verbal, we're talking now words, verbal response, they hear in my short micro narrative what it is they've been through, and they recognize that. And sometimes what's implicit and, in effect, unconscious and not expressed gets expressed, and they recognize it, and that's the empathic moment. So, and then that begins a new phase of openness. So we've now gone around, big word of the day, in effect, a hermeneutic circle, and a circle of interpretation. That's my favorite moment. And so when it breaks down, and so now I'm going to net it out and bring it in for a landing. I'm going to concisely say something about each of the 4 breakdowns. When empathy breaks down in the openness, receptivity phase, I get merger. I get emotional contagion. Yes, I'm experiencing what the other experiences, but I don't know it. I'm caught up. In effect, we're both now in a panic, or we're both now in enthusiasm. Hooray, my team wins, right? Okay, great, hugs. It's good. Enjoy the moment. It's not empathy, but it's input. It's input to the empathic process. In understanding when, so that's a thought. Next thought, when empathy breaks down in the phase of empathic understanding, what we often get is conformity. Conformity. Follow the rules. Don't rock the boat. And of course, conformity inevitably leads to what? Nonconformity, a kind of inauthentic rebellion. And nothing wrong with conformity or nonconformity. Go on green and stop on red. We need rules and regulations. Nevertheless, they're not what people are as a possibility. When empathy breaks down, if one were interrupted in the process of empathic interpretation, empathy would be incomplete and fall back to a form of egocentrism, projection. There are lots of psychological mechanisms that can be queued up when empathic interpretation breaks down. I hasten to add, there's nothing wrong, in effect, with projection, but just distinguish it, right? It's not empathy. And finally, in the fourth phase, if empathy breaks down in responsiveness, you get, of course, yeah, you didn't get me, you didn't understand, I thank you for sharing, and you didn't but more to the point, what you can get is the misuse of language in gossip, and a kind of I mean, that would be the best way of putting it. And storytelling and digression, and let me tell you what, all of the different ways that empathy can misfire. So
1 minute, 1 minute, Lou.
Thank you, Edwin. That's perfect. And so, in effect, I acknowledge your empathy. The people on this call and tuning in for the replay are committed to making a difference in the matter of expanding empathy in the community, and I acknowledge this. And if you want to and wish to engage more with this definition, it's in my book, A Rumor of Empathy. So I do get in a plug here, A Rumor of Empathy, right? Because it's a rumor until we engage it and implement it and make it happen, so that the rumor would be less of a rumor and more of a reality in our interaction, conversation, and dialogue. Thanks for the opportunity to be in relatedness with you.
Thanks, Lou. Let's give him a round of applause here. We gotta
Hear, hear.
Everybody applause. So, Lou,
we need a soundbite, canned applause, right?
I could put that in there. We got,
yeah.
So, Lou, you and I talked before, and you had said that you're giving these presentations on empathy, and that people are asking you about training, like how do you train empathy, and that you don't really have that's what you want to develop now, is a training program. How do you see that program? What would you do to develop an empathy training program?
No softball questions here. So there's a significant demand, I think, for expanding empathy in the community. I mean, professional organizations, not just corporations, but so, I mean, the way to do it is to collect experiences and reminders. And yes, the definition is a part of the training. On day one of the training, I would begin by asking people, what the heck they think empathy is. They're hearing about this. Every once in a while, the president makes reference to it in Supreme Court nominations, and there's more political round and back and forth, and that's fine. So I would begin by asking people what they all think empathy is, right? And then we'll collect. Now I've let the cat out of the bag because I proposed a definition. But before doing that, and then I would offer a definition and see what people map, and then there will be daily exercise. I mean, there have to be some exercises, right? I mean, that's the value of a workshop, where people get in the workshop and do things. Now here we have here's an exercise. We talk to each other. Right? Am I answering your question?
Yeah. I also want to have time. We have about 7 minutes for other participants.
Yeah, so ask me anything. I should have ended with, take a foot and take a note on the next. What are your questions? Go, please.
Kathy.
I do have a question. In your slide, you had the gracious listening part, and I guess gracious listening is my area, and perhaps I too narrowly define empathy as empathic listening. But anyway, at that stage, when you offer empathic listening to someone, Are we seeing me or are we seeing Andrea? Anyway, strangely, I'm seeing Andrea, but I'm talking.
I'm seeing you. You've got the whole screen.
So,
keep going. You're doing great. So what's happening?
When you offer empathic listening, then the person gets to respond and tell you whether you're accurate or not, and then you try again. There's a lot of interaction and checking until you get it just right, and then you have a really big empathic moment. So I guess you would see that as going back and forth between your top one, openness, receptivity, and the listening. But for me, it seems you need a little side arrow there for checking back and forth to see if it's right, if you've gotten there.
Well, I mean, I would say thank you. I mean, first of all, so thank you. I mean, let me check if I've got that. I mean, when I say, so you tell me about you're learning to ride a bike as a child, and it's not going so well. You crash, and whatever happens, happens. And that was a difficult moment. It wasn't, I don't know, maybe it was traumatic. And the person who's teaching you to ride the bike gets your parent, my parent, I'll speak in the first person, gets frustrated and instead of being understanding, gets angry. What the heck's the matter with you? Can't you even steer this flippin' bike? Well, okay, so I'm telling the story and you're listening. And so what happens now?
So I might reflect and say, wow, you were just trying to be a really good parent and instead you find yourself screaming at your child. Yeah. And you're trying to find your center again so you can be with him in a good parenting way.
Yeah, well, I was being the kid. I was reporting the kid. But it may work either way because the parent is re-experiencing learning to ride the bike as the kid. So I would say that itself is, when you put anything in the form of words, that's a response. And then I'll say, no, you just don't get it. Nobody gets me. I'm making this up now, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I think you need the little arrow back and forth.
Okay, well, I'll send you I'm really, no kidding, I'll send you the PowerPoint. It's a single slide. And you can help me line up. Really, the matter of the arrows is of the essence, so thank you for that.
I just think there's a lot of the back and forth before you really get it, the full empathic response.
I think I think we have agreement here, but it's the nature of the
charting.
arrow.
All right.
Okay. Other questions? Comments?
Well, I have one thought. I mean, I thought that Kathy was going to say, when you're listening, and then what am I listening to the other person or am I listening to myself? You see, and that, I mean, so when I'm sorry, Kathy, I can't hear you. My opinion of what you're saying is interrupting with my listening to what you're saying. Now I'm making this up, right? That didn't. In other words, I have to distinguish between what you're saying and my opinion, my judgment, my evaluation,
your interpretation,
my round and round, and in fact my interpretation. But if it's not explicit, it's not even an interpretation. I think it's the way things really are, right? And so it gets in the way. I thought that was what you were. Well, I mean, you said a lot of things there, and I may have gotten or not. So I thought, so that's like to the empathy training. I'm sorry, I'm going to finish the sentence and then I'll be quiet. To the empathy training course, lesson 101, if not 102, is distinguish what the other person is saying from my opinion, my judgment, my evaluation, my assessment of what the other is saying. Because I'll always have an opinion, but now distinguish it.
Absolutely. I was just adding the checking with the speaker to see if you got it.
Yeah. The mirroring, in effect, that's a form of response to mirror back. And I didn't talk about mirroring, but I might have at that point.
Okay, great. I think we're ready to move on to the next presentation. Thank you for that, Lou. And Andrea, you're next.
Okay. So, and I'll self-time here. So what I teach is something called compassionate listening. And I won't talk about the history of compassionate listening. We have 5 core practices, and I'll just speak a little bit about those. The first is cultivating compassion, and there are many ways of doing that. One of the things that Lou mentioned was stepping in the shoes of the other, and that's hopefully we'll be able to cultivate a person's ability to do that. The second is developing, this is the second core practice, is developing the fair witness, which is for each and every one of us to constantly notice what's happening in our minds as we're listening to people. Are we going into judgment? Just to notice, and then to suspend whatever is getting in the way of us being fully present, and then going back to full presence for the sake of listening to the other. The third core practice is respecting self and other, knowing that within each individual is the capacity to manage their own problems so that we don't automatically go into a fix-it situation, which is so often what we as caring people want to do, is we want to help people not suffer. But that can also be disrespectful if we jump in there without their even asking. The fourth core practice is listening with the heart, which is where we suspend our judgments, our analyses, our interpretations, so that we can expand our hearts and be fully present, so that we integrate our hearts into the experience. This is all quite experiential. Our fifth core practice is speaking with the heart, or speaking from the heart. It's about having the courage to speak our truth kindly and respectfully, but to speak our truth. All these core practices combine to help people connect from the heart, and they're very helpful in transforming the energy of conflict, and that's about the interrelationship. Our basic workshop in compassionate listening is called Compassionate Listening, Healing the World from the Inside Out. Knowing that we can't be really effective out there in the world if we're not doing our own work and listening deeply to ourselves in the process. So what we've done in the world, we've done projects in Israel, Palestine. We've done a Jewish-German reconciliation project. I myself have been to Germany several times doing that work, helping to bring people together to listen deeply to each other's stories, to suspend judgment of the other, so that we can find that common humanity that lives within each of us. Also, when we do these journeys to Israel, Palestine, or when we've gone to Germany, brought Jewish people to Germany, is we listen to witnesses, people who've had different painful experiences, different preconceived notions about the other. We listen respectfully. And what Kathy was talking about reflecting back, is one of our very basic experiential exercises. So before we go and listen to witnesses in the field, we do experiential training with all of the people who are going on our journeys. And that includes listening from the heart to another person, and then switching roles. We have a lot of exercises designed to give people experiential practice before they're out in the field in difficult situations. We have an exercise that is one of the most powerful ones that we do, that is about reflecting when people talk about the stories that are meaningful to them, reflecting back, listening for the different levels of the story, and making simple reflections. So listening to the facts, listening to the feelings, listening to the body language. We always include body language now, and listening to the values, which is really very key. And so often what we find is when people have talked about something that's meaningful or troubling to them, when their values, what they really deeply care about, are reflected back simply, without our interpretation and analyses, that's when they feel, now I feel heard. Now I understand why this has been so concerning to me. It's a great gift. With compassionate listening, our purpose is to be a gift to the speaker. It's not to fix a situation, it's to help people feel fully heard. Where else we do this work, so we teach workshops. I, in fact, am going to Germany next week, and we'll be teaching at the CTAR conference in Bonn. I don't know if you know about that, Sascha, but we teach workshops throughout the United States, and our work has been in Africa. People have gone to Africa to teach it, many places in the world. And again, the whole power of what we do is we have developed experiential exercises that help people learn to be fully present and to help transform the energy of conflict into opportunities to connect. So I think I may have just 1 minute left. I don't know. Are you timing that also, Edwin?
Yeah, you have 3.5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Another thing that I do, and probably many of my colleagues do as well, is we facilitate dialogue. And we facilitate dialogue across the divides of religious differences, political differences, personal histories. So bring people together in a respectful environment and help hold the space so that they can listen deeply to one another. And it's a way of hopefully, over time, bringing greater peace to the world, which obviously we desperately need all over the world. Let me see if there's anything else that I have left out that I think is really important. We do also teach about, we have a segment on inquiry and when not to use inquiry. And if inquiry is for the sake of our curiosity as opposed to for the sake of being a deepening experience for the person whose story we're listening to, then it might be that listening is not, inquiry isn't a method to use. For us, being fully present without words is one of the most powerful things that we can do. The next level is those simple reflections that aren't about our interpretation, our story, our analyses. The third thing would be skillful inquiry that would be of service to the speaker. And then how do you transform the energy of live conflict? That's a fourth level of experiential exercises that we've developed. Very challenging, and it's all wonderful work. I've been doing this for a very long time. I've written a book called Practicing the Art of Compassionate Listening, which also has some of our specific exercises broken down so that people can bring them into their own environments, be it in the workplace, in dialogue situations, or in personal relationships. We all have conflict in our deepest intimate relationships. How do we transform the energy of conflict? So I leave it up to questions and answers, and I am here to respond.
Okay, we're open for questions, and I'll start. You've been, the Compassionate Listening Project has been going for quite a while. How long has it been going on now? How long has the group been working?
The group has been working together for about, I would say, 20 years. Mm-hmm. It's based on the work of Quakers, Buddhists, and all other great teachers in the world. We integrate mercilessly from wise people. We've integrated Parker Palmer's work, Joanna Macy's work, some other, Jean Houston, lots of different people. But we have taken now more than 30 delegations to Israel and Palestine. The Jewish-German project was very active in 2002 through 2005, but there are still ripple effects from that work. that are going on. Yeah, so again, to answer simply, we've been doing this work for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. A lot of experience, yeah.
A lot of experience in the field,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
And Kathy?
I'll just say, Andrea, I had seen you on Edwin's website and went to your website, and I said to Edwin, I want to be in a salon when Andrea's coming.
Oh, okay. How sweet. Thank you.
Because there's so much overlap between what we do, which I'll talk about more later. So here we are. I also want to mention that Rosa, and Edwin, correct me on her name, Zubistriata, something like that, who's also in the focusing world that I'm in, presented at Salon number 1 and again at Salon number 2 on what she's now calling empathic inquiry, but started out in the dynamic facilitation of Jim Ruff. And basically inquiry or facilitating dialogue across the divide is her emphasis as well.
Yes, yes.
And that she basically, you have someone who does active listening with everybody so that everybody's free to get it all on the table.
Yeah, I know Jim Ruff's work. He's local, he's a Washington State guy. So anyway, well, here we are, and I really welcome, and I'm a Chicago gal, so.
Well, I was in Chicago, and I'm in Eugene, Oregon. So.
Oh, okay, and I'm in Seattle, Washington.
Yeah.
So. Any specific questions from anybody?
Well, I have a specific question.
Okay.
This is Lou speaking.
Yeah.
And my question, this is no softball question here, but the thing that it's because I'm dealing with it and struggling with it. I get a bunch of people together, call it a workshop, and everybody, including myself, I'm happy to use me as an example, I'm walking in the door with my stuff, right? I mean, if we've all had our mountains to climb, and probably, people are survivors. They've survived whatever they've survived. Palestinian, Israelis. I survived learning how to ride a bicycle. It's not always as simple. And so I'm bringing my stuff in. How do we get through that? How do we get a clearing of the individual? No, but I know, by the way, that the Palestinians are wrong, or I know that the Israelis are wrong. I know that the Germans are a bunch of wrong. See what I mean? How do we get through the inauthenticity up front? What do you think?
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, figure out what is the purpose for coming together in the first place.
Yeah.
Then I think we talk about developing the fair witness, we talk about suspending judgment, and we talk about full presence. So when you become aware, when you notice that your mind is going into judgment, into your opinion, then it's your work, it's each individual's work to recognize it, let it go temporarily, and come back to full presence. This is where integration between head and the heart is really important, and it's an energetic shift, Lou, of moving the energy to the place of heart. And how do you do that? I'll tell you, one of the things that I sometimes do is, if my head is getting so active that I can no longer listen fully without my story coming out, I may even place my hand on my heart, which is a reminder to me, this is what needs to open right now. So it's about integrating the places of wisdom and making sure that our hearts are fully active and engaged. And if they're not, then our heads get carried away.
Okay, thank you. I mean, we can talk more about that, and will.
Okay.
I would have a little question, Andrea.
Yes, Sascha.
The saying that ignorance is bliss does contain quite a lot of truth, unfortunately, and I can really see that people actually take quite a delight in taking an extreme stance. They take a delight in being stubborn, closed-minded, and what you've described is a wonderful method, but it takes work.
Yes.
And it takes work of heart, work of soul, and I think most people are quite happy being stuck in their closed-minded ways of thinking. So what kind of candy, what is the carrot that you offer people to actually get on the train of empathy, get the process going?
So for most, I think so many people in our world realize that the way that we've been doing business hasn't worked for us as organizations, societies, and as a planet. That we're talking about needing to find a new way of being to resolve the problems so that we don't all destroy each other. And
well, I heartily agree, Andrea, but right now I can see that the world is kind of in a strange place. In the United States, you have Donald Trump, who wants to increase torture and shoot basically all South Americans who want to come to America. In Europe, we have a huge discussion, and all the governments who want to keep fugitives from coming to Germany and to Europe by use of force. So that seems to be like a counter-compassion movement going on, it seems to me like that.
so what I would say in my own experience is that while those extremes do exist, there are so many people like you and me and the other people on this conversation who are longing to make a difference for a different way. And that's the and there's a lot of energy there, and that's what we have to nourish and nurture. And it's one person at a time, and it's one group at a time. And I think for me, that's where I find hope, because in those small groups of bringing people together, I find people with the same longing, who really want to understand, who really don't want to destroy our world and our planet, but who want to build something different. And I know that we each have that capacity within us. So then how do we nurture it? And there are a lot of people wanting to do that. And so that's why we're here. How do we help those around us learn the skills so that we can all make a difference for the sake of our children and grandchildren?
Well, we have a minute and a half. So what do you think about doing an online training, creating an online platform and resource for training empathy from your experience?
Yeah, so, and Edwin, you and I have talked about it. I think it's a great idea. I am a technological idiot, but I know that there are people out there who know much more than I do. I assume that there are tons of people out there who are totally reliant on technology because they can't get out of, because technology is so broadly available. I would imagine that if we could bring, I think there are challenges. There are language challenges, but I'm personally curious about trying out some curricula in this environment to see how it works. Again, technologically, I wouldn't know how to pull people in, but I think any place that we can broaden the reach of the skills that we teach, I'm all for it, and I'm willing to contribute to it.
Okay, well, thank you. And I also took your training, came up to Washington, and it was a 3-day training, had a really good time, really learned a lot. So thank you for offering that training and presenting here.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your work in the world. To think of 30 delegations going to Palestine and Israel, and many years going to Germany with Jewish people to share experience. Well, just thank you. Wonderful.
And I think you went to Guatemala too, right?
Yes, we've done delegations in Guatemala. We've done our work in Rwanda. My book has been translated into Kinyarwanda, and it's being used by leaders apparently there. And we've done Tibetan Chinese dialogue experiences here in Seattle, and it helps bring great meaning to my life.
Okay, well, thank you. And we have our next presenter, Sascha.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I feel a bit humbled because I'm in a circle of such great experienced practitioners of empathy. Um, well, as in my too long introduction at the beginning, we have started 2 years ago, 3 years ago now here in Germany, what we call the Academy of Empathy. Our focus is teaching about empathy, offering courses. We haven't done so much in the last few years. Basically, we are offering other courses as well. And so this training salon is also for me an opportunity to pick up more methods. What we actually use, and I've become very thrilled in hearing about the Theory U from Otto Scharmer, and which was developed at the MIT. I don't know if you heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
We have been working quite a lot with the Theory U, and empathetic listening is also an integral part of the Theory U, about the connection of the heart, from heart to empathic listening to the other person, and connecting with an open heart. And I have made very nice experiences introducing that into business-related workshops. I have a great dream. I want to. Compassion really has been something which I was very active pursuing. Before I started as a trainer, I've been living in a monastery for 7 to 8 years, and it was an Indian monastery, an ashram, and I was practicing bhakti yoga. And I was very when I left the monastery to enter into the real life or non spiritual life again, I noticed that slowly I was losing something. I was losing the kind of compassion I had before, and now I'm very excited to hear Andrea talk about these methods. And I've done a lot of research. Basically, I'm doing my PhD thesis now on empathy training, and I just started 3 months ago. But I think, and I'm agreeing with Lou that empathy, compassion, these things have to be defined. Sometimes I like to talk more about compassion as empathy from a neurological point of view. Empathy is just something that happens in our brain without really connecting to our heart. So we need to do this willful soul body work to actually transform empathy into real behavioral empathy, so to speak. If you want to stick to the word empathy, then I sometimes call it behavioral empathy, which when I talk about it and I use it in the workshops, I tell people that behavioral empathy also has a lot of components. One of the components is definitely empathic listening, which is, as Andrea already said, and Lou already said, is more than just hearing. Is more like, and I can borrow a lot from my yoga experience there, because it's a full presence without disturbances of the mind. I don't know if yoga does not have a very yoga does not view the mind as very the mind has kind of a dual thing. It can be your friend, but you have to train it. If you don't train your mind, it's going to be your enemy, and it will just drag you to the easy things to enjoy in life. So if you have 2 meals, and one meal is a fatty burger with fries, and the other meal is a healthy spinach, I don't know, vegetable burger, quinoa type of dish, then our mind will tell us, go for the burger, go for the quick enjoyment. Don't think about the future, don't think about dietary restrictions, just indulge. Now, we have to train our mind, and I think the methods of training the mind, Andrea has described quite a lot. That I'm still in the process of seeing what methods I can use to actually get people in a professional context, because that is unfortunately I have to live off trainings and coachings, and corporations are where the money is, but I would really love to do compassion training, empathy training with professionals, because actually, I mean, they're also partly ruining the world. So more compassion in the business world could really do the world some good. And I'm thinking, what kind of methods can I take which are business appropriate? I'm now studying, for example, the work that Tanya Singer is doing, and her group, and they're using a lot from Buddhism, these metta, loving kindness meditation, which is kind of similar what I did in Bhakti Yoga. Now, if you tell that to rational thinking engineers or software engineers, IT people, at least here in Germany, many of them are hard to reach. Out of a group of 20, 19 will tell you, well, what you're saying is you're a douchebag, basically. You're weak, you're a douchebag. And just the one person that is interested, that person will be very receptive, will listen to you, and also visit your workshops if you offer open workshops. Now, what I would be really interesting would be like backdoor empathy teaching, and not, I mean, empathy as a thing can also be used against people. Empathy can be used by recruiters for, now is this person lying? Is this person telling the truth? Empathy can be used to your disadvantage. Now, we don't want to equip people at the Academy of Empathy. We certainly don't want to equip people to become better sociopaths. We want also that connection to compassion. And frankly, I'm still in the process of figuring out what kind of methods are best to use in a business context. Now, the theory U has proven to be kind of a Trojan horse. Trojan horse? Yes, a kind of people are more ready to accept this empathic process, and we have had some very nice results in consulting where people actually opened up to empathy. Outside of the theory U, I found that it is hard to actually open people up for this kind of process. A lot of the seminars I'm giving are cross-cultural seminars, and actually I have to deal with people not wanting to be empathetic on a daily basis. I've done seminars also in the US, and it was much different. It's mostly that many of my clients are they have outsourced to the Philippines, to China or to India, and now they have to deal with people from 6,000 miles away, and they simply refuse to be empathetic. They say, well, this person is just a little drone, it's supposed to work, it's supposed to deliver. I don't really have to listen to, I don't have to care. And so, well, to sum it up, I've been trying to teach them to be empathetic for the last 10 years, but I've seen it's a lot easier if you do open seminars and people are coming to you with an open heart than if you have to do it in a workshop or seminar in a business context where people just want to get better at their job and don't really want to do soul searching, or don't want to bring their heart into their work. And I'm still trying to figure out how to sell that, how to sugarcoat these compassion, empathy training to make it attractive for people who feel of love.
Just lost some audio.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, just for a second you broke up there, but we hear you.
Okay, okay.
If you just restate your last sentence, I think we'll...
Yeah, I'm still in the process of figuring out how best to sell compassion empathy training in a business context where people are hardwired to earn money without looking left and right.
Okay, then that's a good point to end then, since your time's up. Andrea, you had a...
Yeah. So Sascha, I have done some work in workplaces in the corporate setting, and what is universal in human relationship is conflict. And conflict is conflict. And conflict, yeah. And businesses have a, conflict leads to inefficiency, leads to can lead to lack of creativity, and conflict is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for people to connect and to therefore open up the way for more collaboration and more creativity. So the back door in with empathy, and you have to look at the language that you use as well, is to what are our agreements about how to manage conflict in the workplace? And how can we integrate moments of silence? When, you come from a meditative, we always integrate meditation and all that kind of stuff into our workshops. But when there's conflict arising, let's take a moment of silence, and to recenter ourselves, or whatever language you use. Lots and lots of opportunities, I believe, in the corporate environment, which will help us use conflict as an opportunity and make the workplace a more collaborative, more creative, and more efficient environment. And that's where, if it's more efficient, then there's profit. To talk in capitalist terms. But I think that there are ways in, and it's a great opportunity. And just watch your language and be really clear about what you're doing. So I've brought this work into different environments that people have gotten a surprising amount. Some people, they have to be open to it, have gotten a surprising amount out of it.
Can we get a response, Sascha? How does that land?
Yeah, that sounds. That's a very good point. To use conflict as a backdoor, that sounds very feasible.
Yeah. And I was also hearing that, like Andrea, that you are looking for an integrative approach. So you're using theory U, you're using, I guess you could use conflict resolution and other processes. What are the processes you're looking at so far to integrate? I mean, you mentioned yoga, kind of your spiritual work. Is there other processes you've looked into?
Well, I looked into theory U and also in Rosenberg's work in the
nonviolent communication.
Yes, that's I like to use that also when I have to deal with cross-cultural conflicts, for example, or other conflicts. That are basically the two processes I looked at.
Are you familiar with human-centered design?
No.
Okay. May I just quickly say that I think the human-centered design is perhaps one of the most forceful processes for promoting empathy at the moment. This is a set of tools from the design community that says if you design anything, that you need to empathize with the users that you're designing for. So in the United States, there's a design school at Stanford. They call the D School, and there's all kinds of corporations going there, like Ford Motors, IBM. There's a lot of these companies that are bringing this design thinking process in, and it starts with empathy, that you need to empathize. So it's a huge force. Now, I would say it is the most strongest force for promoting empathy in the culture at the moment.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
I don't want to start a long discussion, but I think that kind of thing is just to mark. It's just a marketing scheme.
Yeah. So you're feeling some skepticism about that process.
No, I think it can promote empathy, but it can also lead to what Volkswagen did in the United States, lie about because they found out people like environment-friendly cars. They couldn't build the engines, so they were empathetic to the user, and just cheated with the software. So no, I don't want to rip apart this human-centered design, but it can also be done without compassion, I think, because that is just understanding where the user clicks. Oh, he looks here, he looks there, and that is how the human brain works. How can we use a human brain, the consumer brain, to actually convince the consumer to buy, and that can also be kind of manipulative, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going. You're doing
Yeah, go for it. Oh, so you just think it's like could be manipulated, yeah.
Yeah.
Like your psychopath, like the psychopath, you're saying that empathy could be used by the psychopath for sociopathic or psychopathic reasons. Well, what do you think about a online curriculum, training curriculum? I don't know. I hope you're.
I think that is wonderful. I think that is a wonderful opportunity because there will be a lot of facilitators who would like, who are asking the same questions. How can we build in empathy training in our curriculum? So many teachers, social workers all around the world, and if they have an easy way of getting that kind of information, that will be wonderful.
Okay, Kathy, I saw you.
Yes, I'll just say a little bit about the fear that human design could be used to take advantage of consumers once you've figured out what they want. I think it's a thin line, but I think as what Edwin is describing could also be one of those backdoor ways to get in. Get in with the backdoor way and then teach the compassion, the next step or something. I'll just say that. I want to mention some resources. I love what you're trying to do. In Pforzheim, there are two feuerstein. The field I come from is empathic listening and experiential focusing. There are two teachers, Hajo Feuerstein and Dieter Miller, and I think it's called Focusing Centrum Pforzheim. Anyway, they have been teaching these empathy-like skills and self-empathy skills in business for probably 30 years. So they might be worth your finding. I tried to make a model for business, and it's on my website, which I listed there, www.cefocusing.com. My husband's a business professor, and I was going to call it compassionate listening, and he said, "Oh, God, nobody in business wants compassion. It's weakness. It makes you a bad competitor," which is also what you said, that people think you're a weak douchebag. So on my website, I actually spent many months coming up with what I thought were terms business might like, and so I've called it intuitive focusing and focused listening. Now, with what Edwin is doing, I feel embarrassed that I gave up the word empathy so easily. But anyway, I've tried to make a model for integrating self-empathy and empathy skills at every level in a business. So you can check that out if you want.
Yeah, really.
And again, there's that dynamic facilitation by Jim Ruff that Rosa's doing. By description, they started out going right into corporations. I don't know how they got in the door, but they have this conflict resolution. They started right in big level corporations. I have not done that myself, but I think that's admirable that they got in that door. Also, one of our presenters in Salon 1, Schwan, has 18 empathy games that she has learned in improv classes and acting classes, and that can be another kind of playful way to get in the door. I totally agree with you that teaching the behavioral empathy, the empathy from the soul or from the heart, is really, really important, not just a cognitive empathy. So, yay for you for knowing that.
We have about 30 seconds for your response, or Sascha.
Well, thank you very much for all the tips, and I will definitely look into all the material, and I think also that what you just said, Kathy, that you know, this cognitive empathy is good, but also we have to get into acting, and this is something which, for example, with the singer group and the whole doing research, that's all self-empathy and self-compassion is very useful, and it's a great stepping stone towards. Well, it's not an end in itself as I see it. I think it's a good stepping stone in behavioral empathy, in compassion and empathy towards other persons, and which is not just empathic listening is very nice, but also we have. I think we should get people also to act, to build a very strong motivation to actually engage in altruistic and pro-social behavior and helping behavior. And the cognitive part is very important, and the self-empathy, but it has to actually end in the motivation for helping behavior. And this is actually also part of my greatest interest.
Beautifully said.
Thank you for that, and we're ready to move on to our final presentation, which is Kathy.
Okay. All right, let's try this again. I have closed some windows. Maybe it only shows a few windows, so let's see what we get now. Nope, same black thing. Okay, whatever. So I presented on the first Salon, my kind of whole basic rubric. So that puts me in the position today to talk more specifically about my actual curriculum, which I was going to show you on my website, but now I won't. I'll just talk about it. So I do want to say that foremost for me, I hope we can do this, is to integrate empathy and self-empathy as all part of the same package. The client-centered people under Carl Rogers would not allow in a major way Eugene Gendlin's addition of the self-empathy skill called focusing. They said Carl Rogers only did reflection, and to add these kind of focusing suggestions to go deeply inside is directive, a huge argument. Throw out focusing. And on the focusing side, the Gendlinites, where I've been for 40 years, are kind of throwing out empathy. Not the many practitioners, but in the formal statement, the mission statement, they didn't want to put the word listening in there because that's Rogers. They're trying to lift up Gendlin and focusing. This makes me totally crazy. So I want us to find a way to know that self-empathy and empathy toward another person are the same thing. So Edwin and I have started calling it self-empathy focusing when it's turned to yourself in a quiet, meditative way, and empathy focusing when it's done in a pair or a group where you exchange turns of empathic listening when the other person is using focusing. So bring it all together. My greatest love is still sharing in circles. Self-empathy is not what turns me on. It is the empathic moment when people get over their differences and come to see the beauty in another person. That just moves me. It moves me to tears even to describe it. That's what turns me on. And at that level, I would say in our curriculum, we could start, the simplest thing is a sharing circle, like the Quakers do. Simply go around in a circle, no interruptions. Anybody can do this. The next level might be the empathy circles that Edwin and his co-worker, whose name I can't pronounce, Lewitsky or Leadovai have a whole model for empathy circles, which I think are mainly based on straight empathic reflection. At least that's what Edwin has done. And a third level could be these empathy focusing circles that I do, which do involve kind of going deeper, which everybody may not want to do or need to do. So I see that. But what I want to present is I have been doing for the last 10 years an online e-course. It consists of 3 emails a week, which are exercises. They are exercises on self-empathy. I have a talent for what's called behavior analysis and programming. Strange though that may seem for an empathic person. I have a talent for breaking skills down into small steps so that you can teach them in a progression that builds. So my course is 10 months long. It introduces people to 10 instant ahas, I call them, and when someone subscribes from my website, they get to download the instant aha manual. And I would say that is 10 applications of self-empathy and empathy focusing. So of the 10, and then each week, each month deals with the same skills. So people practice the same exercise once a week for 4 weeks, and I think that's really important. Not just to do an exercise once, but to do it 4 times over the month. And then 10 months, I mean, you're constantly using the same skills over 10 months. So each week they get 1 exercise from the instant ahas, which are like applications. They get 1 exercise that initially is a self-empathy, self-awareness kind of exercise, and that starts out with simple relaxation and meditation and guided imagery exercises, and then moves on to exercises more specific to self-empathy focusing, such as clearing a space and various ways of being with yourself in a caring way internally. I can't explain all that in the time given, and then the third exercise every week is a complete focusing session, and focusing is basically a 6-step process for being with yourself inside, for being with what Jenlin described as the felt sense. And when people talk about speaking from your heart, it's a little broader than that, but it's in your body, in the center of your body. And focusing is a very specific skill for going back and forth between that bodily feel, which I call the intuitive feel or the creative edge, to get it into business mentality, and words, images, gestures that arise from that, and constantly going back and forth between those symbolizations and the body feel until there is an aha, what Jenlin calls a felt shift. So it's not just a meditation process, it is a meditative problem-solving, body-centered problem-solving method. So that's what I teach. What is lacking, number 1, is marketing. I came up with this after I'd really pretty much retired. I don't market it, and I still get, just from my website and 1 announcement to the focusing discussion list, I get 70 people a year for the past 10 years who religiously are opening these 3 emails a week. I don't have research to say whether they do the exercises or how well they learn the skills. That would be interesting to find out. But they keep coming back, and they never email me and say, this is ridiculous, it doesn't make any sense. So but before marketing, like let's say Edwin has a huge email list, and he would say, everybody can sign up for this course. Now I don't want that until we have what I think are the missing steps. And the missing step is online, face-to-face support groups and practice groups, and also ongoing email support and practice groups. And I have done this. I have had a completely email listening and focusing group where people would come on and whenever they needed to do this self-empathy process, and then someday across cyberspace and time zones somebody would give them a reflection back. It was just as close and empathic as face-to-face. Many focusing teachers have taught 10-week listening, focusing, or empathy focusing classes online through Zoom, teleconferencing, Maestro conferencing, Zoom. So we know how to do that. We know how to do it. And I have not offered that to the participants in my e-course. I think it's the missing piece. I also think it's a part that could be monetized. I don't need to monetize it. I would like to teach the people who would facilitate these groups, but I think one can offer for instance, my 10-week course for free, but people could pay, I think people could easily pay $200 a month for a weekly 3-hour empathy focusing video class and an ongoing email class. So then you could have, we would train and certify empathy facilitators, and they could have, I think a group has to be 15 to 20 people max, and then you have people break out and do triads during the 3-hour time period.
Have about 30 seconds.
So an empathy facilitator, for 40 years it's been hard for anyone to make money selling empathy, so this is my suggestion. You could offer that and train people to do it, and I think $200 a month for that level of support would get people. So that's it. That's it.
Okay, we have 10 minutes for Q&A, and I'll start with the question. Like you started off talking about some of the conflict between the Rogerian person-centered approach and general and focusing community, and I've seen that within the general. People have these different methods, and then there's people don't dialogue. I really look at how do we integrate all this, and, and have an integrative approach. I mean, I've been to NBC groups like, well, you're not doing it right. You got to do it this way, yeah. And then some of my most painful experiences have been trying to work with people in the empathy community. It's almost like when we get into this level of emotion, it's like you get outside of the control, like who's in charge, yeah. and it's like Pandora's box seems to open, and all the evil spirits come out.
Really?
And there's just this painful, and I've had groups totally blow up, So, and these are empathy groups totally blowing up.
What has been so upsetting for me, and so it's been so upsetting that I've actually stayed in this dysfunctional family for 40 years, trying to figure it out and trying to tell them, hello. And now I've just pulled the plug. I've just disconnected from that discussion group because I can't handle it. I can't handle to be having a violent, well, they don't think they're violent, let me tell you. The people who are up in their head, the focusing thinkers who would never acknowledge that they're stuck in their heads, they don't even know they're being violent. They're just logical. There's a wonderful book by Patricia Evans called The Verbally Abusive Relationship, which shows you step by step how in a conversation a person who is appearing to be totally logical can make the other person totally crazy. So anyway, yes, could we please not do that here? Because we please bring self-empathy and empathy together.
Yeah.
I wish to put up my hand to contribute to the conversation. And thank you. I mean, I acknowledge your empathy and that of everyone on and or listening to this call. The commitment is clear. Sometimes we don't succeed. right? I mean, just because my empathy group blows up, and hopefully nobody gets too violent, but with the irony and the humor is powerful, right? Just because we didn't get there in this group or on this day doesn't mean the commitment is not there. So you know that, right? I remind you of what y'all already know. So I'm listening to you, Kathy, and the judgments and evaluations are going off in my head. I mean, I know Genlin, I knew him. That's going off. Rogers, I never knew, but studied him a lot. That's going off. You're going off. I mean, so Lou, distinguished. So I wish to, bear witness, right? I mean, I wish to be in a, no, but here's the tough love. So over here on the left is empathy. Over here on the right is tough love, or vice versa. Tough love is not compassion. So whatever that is, right? I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but that's like more confrontational methods, right? There are empathic methods, which Andrea, we're getting in touch with the heart. Meanwhile, coming in the door, it's rah, 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 I got my thing, rah, 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 you got your thing. Well, we got to have a breakthrough in the matter, and here's my access to the breakthrough. I've got some inauthenticity, whether it's my attachment to some version of focusing or attachment to some version of client-centered everything a la Carl Rogers, and we pause for a moment to honor the man who is worthy of it in every way. Or, Freud, I mean, is waiting in the wings. I've read and published a lot on him, haven't thrown that into the mix. Oh my God, people are going to get crazy, right? So there's some inauthenticity, which I have to give up to get beyond that. So that's the thought I offer for your consideration. Speak in the first person. What's my inauthenticity? Thank you.
So I'll just take my 10-minute space back here and say that in terms of a curriculum or the way that we're doing this, so far, the way that Edwin is doing it, what I want to see is collaboration. Ann Weiser Cornell has an e-newsletter. Kathy has an e-course. Schwann has an e-course. Everyone has something. To make an online curriculum makes it really easy to have branches to all of these different resources that have the capacity to reach different kinds of people, and to keep it that way as much as possible, that we do not have to argue, are we going to use Kathy's way or are we going to use Schwann's way?
Well, we're getting ready to argue about whether we have to argue or not. I acknowledge, Edwin. Edwin, you are one of the most inclusive people I have ever met, and I acknowledge you for that. And, there's a dialectic here. At some point, conflict has value. Now, I'm not saying pull out firearms. That's insanity. But if people differ, they have to differ. I mean, there's a matter, and I don't. At the moment, we have violent agreement. Right, we're in powerful agreement, but there may even be a place for conflict, and there's a challenge for that too, because I'm not comfortable with conflict.
Okay, taking back my 10 minutes again. It's probably over, and then we can go to the general discussion, and everybody can say what they want.
This is the general discussion. I'm sorry, I apologize.
We have 4 minutes.
My 10 minutes. You're supposed to ask me questions.
I apologize.
So
I thought this was the discussion.
There will be conflict, but I don't think you have to go in assuming conflict. There is a way to do collaboration, a wonderful, powerful way, and I want us to keep our feet grounded in that way, in inclusiveness, as Edwin does. You will also notice with Edwin, if there's any confusion or difference of opinion, he'll say, he'll just start reflecting you. He'll just start saying you back instead of arguing or interacting. Or he'll say, let's set up a time and we'll do empathic listening exchange on this. And I am so grounded in that, and I would hope, of course I can't argue and impose it on anyone, but Edwin's doing it and he's the boss, that we have as a norm, empathic listening as a norm rather than arguing. When I watch CNN, I can't even watch it anymore because the panelists interrupt each other, and you cannot learn something new about another person if you can't listen. So just to impose non-interruption allows empathy, as far as I'm concerned. It allows the possibility you might hear something different from another person. So I want to be grounded in that assumption that I will always try to fall into empathic listening rather than arguing back and forth. So, any other questions or comments or resources to offer me?
I'm curious about something. One of our very basic exercises in compassionate listening, I wonder if you have in what you do, and it's uninterrupted speaking and listening. It's a really brief setup of 3 minutes, on with agreements beforehand about not interrupting and things like that. I would assume that that's pretty basic in your curriculum as well.
Yes, I call it passive listening as opposed to active listening, and I have a very simple protocol. I especially recommend it to couples. You have an established word that you're going to say, a stupid word that'll break the argument, like popcorn or peace pipe, or somebody will sit down on the floor, something that's agreed between the two people, and that means, okay, we're going to stop arguing. We're not going to argue about stopping arguing. We're just going to stop. We're going to sit down, and we're going to have a timer, and we're going to just have passive listening, uninterrupted speaking times, with a timer going back and forth. And what you find is you can't scream for very long if nobody is arguing back.
Right.
And just with passive listening, over time, people will start to speak more vulnerably. I give an example of, well, what if this happened out in the world? Like if you were at Walmart and you saw a parent and saw two people arguing. What if you had a listening facilitator at Walmart who would say, oh, let's just sit down and take turns? It should be a cultural norm.
So can I just add another thought to that? And it's a question actually to all of us, is would there be value for us to explore among whatever group of people Edwin is pulling together some of the basic exercises that we do, and
absolutely,
and at least in our small groups, sharing some of our experiential exercises. I have a lot of energy around being able to do that. I'm wondering if you do.
Yes, and I was going to share one today. It's called Caring, Feeling, Presence. It is basically, it's from Pete and Ed, who did biospiritual focusing. It's basically go inside quietly. Imagine that you have found an infant on the steps of a hospital. And it is your job to convey to that infant through your body that it is totally wanted and welcome in the world. So you imagine yourself picking up and holding that infant and feel what it feels like in your body. Now imagine turning that same kind of caring, feeling presence toward your own inner child or your own issues. And then it goes on. You develop an inner nurturer. You come up with images. Who in your life ever nurtured you in that way? Was it a dog? Was it your grandma? There's a whole lot you can do. And again, I teach it over a month, that one little exercise. So I knew we'd resonate, Andrea.
I love that. Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the end. So now we're going to go into a like a half an hour on how might we work together to build a comprehensive online empathy training curriculum. And this is going to be an open discussion just to have this vision and what could we do just to think about that and talk about it a little bit. So far, the methods that have set up is a website for having this as the intention, and I've been framing it as how might we develop an empathic way of being. So it's just not create empathy, but it's more like a personal identity of being an empathic person. And I see compassion as like a subset of empathy geared towards, just by definition, to suffering. And we've been setting up different projects with that goal in mind. One has been Empathy Trainer Salon, which we're doing here is to network trainers together. Another group that Sascha is part of is more of coming from the academic side of things, where we have 6 or 7 of us coming from the academic point to do a literature review project. So we're creating a website with all the different academic articles and studies about empathy training, and so there's that project. And looking at other possibilities, like one thing that's come up is out of these groups has been a trainer presents, like for an hour, puts together a workshop that they want to offer, a 1-hour workshop. It's made on the on the web, and then you present it, and then to a group of other trainers, and then the other trainers give feedback and actually help to refine the workshop. I had the idea of maybe we need a empathy trainers association, like more like a professional association where trainers can get together and we can advocate, because it seems like we need to advocate for empathy and compassion in the world in a more systematic way. Like if the U.S. government can spend $500 million to train 5 fighters in Syria this was part of on the on the Congress, they were talking about that $500 million, and all they have to show for it is 5 fighters to go and fight in Syria. I mean, it's insane. $500 million. What could we do with that? So, yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to kick off this discussion. How might we work together to build a comprehensive empathy training curriculum? And the other point I just want to make is I see the human-centered design. There's a couple of trainings for training for human-centered design. I've been doing those online and bringing the design community into this discussion too, because it's a very influential community, has tons of resources and a lot of creativity, and there's a lot of young and enthusiastic people in that community. So with that, open forum, whoever wants to jump in.
I just had to smile when you said, what could we do with $500 million, you know? What if we design the project, the empathy project, in such a way that we start with a question: what would we do if we have $500 million? How would that change our work, and how would we plan if we would have that money? And maybe by some chance, maybe we get the money, and then we can put the plan into action. If we don't get the money, then we just go on as we have always been doing, working from person to person. But it would be interesting to actually plan for that, to create a vessel that is so large that if the money pours in, actually we would know what to do with that. How to organize the work, how to train people to bring empathy in the world. I think that you had a very brilliant idea how to plan the whole thing.
Yeah, just jump in, Kathy.
I don't like jumping in. I'm
okay.
not going to unless forced.
Right,
I will if I have to, but it is contrary to my empathic way of being. I'm a good competitor if I have to be, but it is not my choice. So I have already said we could make the best empathy curriculum in the world eventually, but I think we could start now with the many wonderful resources that Edwin has already turned up. I think we could have, as I said, a tree with many branches of existing curriculum. Some of those you would have an introductory exercise, and then some of those might be monetized from the get-go. Who knows? It depends on whether someone's able and willing to offer their online curriculum for free or whether they're not. But I don't think that matters. You could still have many parts that were free and branches and little leaves that went off that might be monetized, because everybody can't keep doing this for free, teaching empathy for free. So I would tend to start with the resource we already have and get as many of those up there as we can, and then go from there. Edwin has interviews with everybody who's written on empathy. That's a course. I mean, that's auxiliary to experiential exercises. I have a course of experiential exercises and a suggestion for online groups to support that. Andrea has a book that teaches this process. Lou has several books. I mean, we've got so many resources. I would tend to find a way to get those up, a tree with branches and leaves, and get started in that way, rather than thinking we have to start from scratch and develop all these things. I'm done.
So what I'm hearing there is there's already so many resources out there. It's really about bringing them together and having, like the metaphor of a tree, that we have the leaves and branches and showing where people can go for different resources. And with Sascha, I was hearing it's more of a brainstorming in terms of, okay, let's just brainstorm. If we had $500 million, what is it that we could do with that? Like, and that's actually part of human-centered design, Sascha. Is you want to brainstorm. When you brainstorm ideas, is you can say, well, we have no money. Let's brainstorm for having no money. Let's brainstorm if we have $500 million. Let's brainstorm only magical, fantastical ideas. So within human-centered design, it's actually one of the methodologies is to kind of open up our creativity by creating these conditions to, to brainstorm more widely and open. Kathy?
I just want to say in closing of that pitch I was making that we wouldn't just have a hodgepodge. We would list a lot of the available resources, and then a group of people put them in order. As I say, from a behavior analysis and programming aspect, there's a sequencing of things where you would make different options available at different points. So I'm not saying just confront someone coming with a hodgepodge and leave them on their own, that there'd be some structuring of that, which would make us have to think about, well, what is an empathy curriculum? But we would start with these wonderful resources that exist, like Schwann's 18 games. Why would we start from scratch developing 18 games? So I'm stopping there.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing there is it's really about having a curriculum that builds, like, more systematically. So there's going to be some kind of a starting point, some basic skills, and then building on those. And I think the compassionate listening whole process is really built up in a systematic way like that.
And at a certain point, you put in an interview that has already been done. At a certain point, you put in a video, or at a certain point, I have CDs of myself giving exercises. You put an MP3 file in. I mean, that's already a lot to do, starting with using what we already have. I need to be quiet. Someone else, put your finger up. Get in.
Okay, here's. So, Edwin, do you know about the Charter for Compassion and Karen Armstrong's work?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because doesn't she also have a bunch of resources? There's a whole section, I believe, on their website, and there are communities all over the world that call themselves compassionate cities, and anyway. So I don't know why I brought that up. It's just there's so many people doing similar things. So for me, starting out, I think, Kathy, you and I are somewhat aligned around this, is, there's so many experiential resources available, and my own feeling is we have to start with what's available already and then bring people through those exercises, or some of them experientially, so that the energy of compassion or empathy moves out into the world, so that we're not all stuck in our heads planning, but we're doing and feeling and being compassion in the world, or empathy, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, Sascha?
I also like Kathy. I see the need for some editorial work because I mean, as Andrea said, it has to get out into the world, but there will have to be some, from my point of view, it will be difficult. I mean, the material, the exercises is out there, and we've all used these exercises in some context or the other. Now, if somebody is, if just all the exercises are collected and put on the internet, on the website, then it will be very confusing. So some editorial work, and many exercises are very similar. At least what I heard Andrea is doing, or what Kathy is doing, that there are some similarities. What I'm doing sometimes is similar to what you guys are doing. Also, I'm doing in a different context. So the editor or the editorial staff would have to actually go to the bottom of the exercise, feel the essence. What is it about? Is it about cognitive empathy? Is it about compassion? Is it about human-centered design empathy, understanding the customer? Is it about walking in the other person's shoe, perspective taking, and group it? And also, I would say that we have to look at it from a cross-cultural point of view. What for people with who were raised and based in the United States might work will be difficult from somebody coming from Poland, or somebody from the American Jewish community. They think different than somebody who is a WASP, you know. And here in the Germans are triggered by different things than somebody from Persia or China. So this is another challenge, how to get, I mean, empathy is a very basic human language, and this human understanding is there. But how to get the exercise out to people cross-culturally, that is also a different thing. And a third thing, which I find extremely interesting, so many practices have been taken out of the meditative context from Buddhism and anything else. Something I have done a lot of semesters in comparative religious studies, and the Christianity has empathy methods to offer. I'm pretty sure the monks and nuns in the monasteries, they were practicing something like that. Islam might have something like that, Judaism might have something like that, and if you take these culturally, traditionally ingrained methods and also put them on the website, we might get the message across, roll it out to the world more easily.
So
it sounds like part of that is getting the core, like really looking at what's the underlying qualities of all of these different methods. At least that's part of what I'm seeing too, is how do you really create a curriculum that builds step by step by step? You know, what's the most important? I've been looking at framing it around an empathic way of being, and I know there's others like the compassion community. That's another whole issue, is there seems to be these different communities. There's the empathy community that won't talk with the compassion community, and it's like the compassion community, like Tanya Singer, like she's out there like attacking empathy, saying empathy's got all this kind of. So I got issues with Tanya Singer that I'd like to talk about.
And Edwin, do you know, you have to, when you read their papers, you know how they do empathy trainings. They just, in empathy trainings, they just focus on sadness. Just imagine a very sad experience, and that is empathy for them, how to feel sad, you know?
Now, exactly. I've seen the studies. Here's the study. No, this is the study. This is the Tanya Singer study. Stab yourself in the eye. Notice the pain that you have. Let's call that empathy. Now, that's one group. The other group is think of the love of your mother, the great love and feeling that you had, how wonderful it was. Let's call that compassion. Let's test the two. Which one worked better? Okay, compassion is better. People feel happier. So, I mean, that's kind of some of the studies that are out there in academia. So, anyway, Kathy,
So first I want to say I love
Sorry,
Sascha.
Kathy. Lou is next on the queue. I didn't.
Absolutely.
I cut off. So I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
about
Thank
that.
you. Well, I mean, I think this conversation may actually require some editing before we put it out there on the public. But having said that,
Don't assume there's going to be editing because it's very difficult.
well,
so watch
you
your
know,
step.
well, so I make no assumptions whatsoever. There are different on-ramps to empathy. Everything from conflict resolution through focusing, through Rogerian everything, through meditative practices, through transformational developmental training of 101 different, I'm going to forgive the academic colleagues because they're looking for a data point, which is always a big hazard. Before I get off this call, I want to say to Sascha, because you have a somewhat academic background, hey man, I'm a resource to you. It sounds like you're doing some interesting work. You've got this matter of a dissertation. I know, I have some insight into that. I'm a resource to you. I'm going to send you a single piece of paper with the top 10 benefits of empathy training, somewhat from a corporate point of view, because that's a high bar. I mean, and it's needed. It's needed, and it's valuable. And what you've done some amazing things. So I mean, everyone on this call has, and some of what you've done, I feel like the chemistry is interesting and right. So I want to engage with that.
Thank you very much, Lou.
Well, thank you. I mean, and from the point of view, I already said what I had to say. I think from the point of view of training and making accessible a wide diversity of contributions. Because even the bad academic papers in their own way with their eyeball and whatever the heck, that's just like insane, right? I mean, there's a moment where empathy is closely related to humor. But there is an aspect of aggressiveness in humor that we filter out, and we allow ourselves a certain, aim-inhibited aggression and or sexuality in humor that we kind of, for whatever our filters in the case of empathy are more, or at least different. But, I mean, we need humor too. Heavens knows we need more humor and compassion. So we cherish that moment. There are different on-ramps to empathy. And, there's a lot of content. There's going to be even more before we're done. And so maybe a way of balancing, achieving some kind of, some kind of harmony and some kind of balance given the diversity of contributions is to talk about how do we access whatever this thing is, empathy equal X, and we know it, it's relatedness and it's our humanity, it's our shared humanity, which I gotta believe even Hindus and Muslims, Christians and Muslims and Jews and Buddhists, watch out for the Buddhists, right? I mean, whatever, that's another joke. If I have to explain the joke, it's not funny, right? I mean, and so there's different on-ramps. I don't know, I think that's good. I'm doing okay. And improv is an access to empathy too. Improvisation, those 18 empathy, I'm using some of those. Some of those are just like hand clapping. Well, wait, I mean, you got to create, part of the challenge, of course, is to create a context. And that's where, to your point, Edwin, human-centered design can be very powerful. And a lot of that is about working with computers, which are notoriously inhuman, but yet they do facilitate things. I've met some amazing people today. And a lot of the value of this conversation is the conversation and the relationships that we're establishing here. I think it's very powerful. I haven't solved any problems with my spiel here, but I do feel I've used up my 2 minutes. And so, keep that in mind. To net it out, different ways of accessing, different on-ramps to empathy, conflict resolution, focusing, whatever. Sigmund Freud has one too. Believe me, he does. It's amazing. We don't want to go there now, but and what else? And humor, empathy, and humor, and a lot of videos in human-centered design. Popcorn.
Okay.
I get to go. I really like. It would be really fun to just make a list of all the different on-ramps, all the different ways that people might access empathy, and use that as one way of mapping out a curriculum. And I want to say to Sascha, I don't know if you have coined the term behavioral empathy. I don't know if anyone else has used it. I think it's a wonderful term. There's a woman from Italy, I think she is, on the focusing discussion list who is battling for action steps You know, she says, do we just sit here and have these felt shifts, and do we ever do anything? And there's a theory on the other side that says automatically if you have a felt shift, it's a paradigm shift at the level of how you perceive the world. You're going to automatically act differently. But I love your concept of behavioral empathy, and I think it's what Edwin has kept describing as he wants an empathic way of being, not just an intellectual study of empathy. I got a little concerned about anybody trying to edit out all the different exercises.
I was thinking of editing Edwin, actually, but I'll leave that.
My turn. My turn.
Sorry.
Okay, see, when people are interrupted, they lose their felt sense of what they're saying. That's my way. I'm against interrupting. What is the problem if somebody goes and, first of all, I think we could have a kind of a shopping for people by letting them experience the teacher. I think a 20-minute video where they get to experience a teacher might let somebody choose the kind of teacher that's going to work for them. And they could come back and try another teacher another time. I don't think it would be horrible if someone did my 10 months where they had some exercises that were, and then they did Andrea's compassion practice. I don't think it's going to damage anybody if they do the same exercises over. I mean, people need to do those exercises over a long time before they get them. So, again, it's a part of the focusing way or of the worldview is to include all the parts of your inner self, and also in any group to try to include all the parts instead of we're making judgments if we're saying Andrea's exercise for such and such is better than Kathy's exercise, blah blah. It's dangerous territory for me. It kind of freaks me out a little. So diversity, as Lou said, and inclusiveness, as Edwin, and some structuring. Yes, we've got to make it. Can't just be a hodgepodge, but I'm not sure it needs to be non-repetitive, I guess you could say. Somebody else.
Okay, Sascha.
Yeah, your point really is very valid, Kathy, because I mean, when we teach compassion, empathy, behavioral empathy, and whatever, I think the Indian way of viewing the teacher, the guru, the person who is heavy with something, that's also a very important aspect. So watching the teacher, a 20-minute video of the teacher, I think that's also a very good approach of getting your empathy training, of being able to choose a teacher that suits you, a person you can respect, you can look up to, where you feel a connection. I mean, an empathetic person should be able to make a connection to anybody, but as we are all humans, we have our traits, and some persons they click with a certain teacher and not with the other. So that could also be a very I like this point very much, of maybe having both, of having different, on the one branch you have the different exercises, on the other branch you have different empathy teachers worldwide. So you can either go shop for exercises to incorporate in your own curriculum, or you can choose a teacher from who you want to choose to learn how to learn empathetic being, or how to learn this kind of behaving and listening and being.
Something I was imagining is a curriculum similar to the compassionate listening curriculum, where you go through the steps, build step by step, but you have a web page that has the presenter presenting, kind of a text in little short videos. And this is typical of MOOCs too, these massively online courses. And then you can have multiple trainers, and you can choose which trainer you want to listen to. And it could even be, you might want to listen to a couple of them. And then you've got samples of the exercises, seeing people do the exercises, and then you're doing it as a team, like and I use human-centered design as the model for that you're doing it in a group, or either a facilitated group, and then you can do the exercises. So it's really, I'm really seeing kind of how this can really be laid out, and one of the models is human-centered design. And there's a course from IDEO that's a 7-week course, and you spend a couple hours reading the material, and you form a team of 4 to 6 people, and you take the course together in person or online. And so anyway, that's like a model. So, and I also want to make the point that human-centered design is just not about computers. That the design methodology is moving. It used to start with designing stuff to be pretty. It's gone into technology, but it's also moving into creating systems, services, and processes. And now it's moving into designing cultures. And there's schools. There's 20 schools here in the Bay Area that are incorporating human-centered design into the schools as the methodology, the school culture, where the students are engaged in designing the school themselves. And you have a set of tools for doing it. So I just wanted to add that part about the design. And we've got 8 minutes left for this discussion.
I'll say one more thing. I'm trying to hang back, but when Sascha, when you spoke about the wanting it to be intercultural, again, I thought an easy way to do that is to, as Edwin probably does, or we'd have to figure out how, but to invite teachers from all different cultures in all different languages. So
definitely.
they would be. That would just be available. You'd go to the French version of the wiki or the Hindu version of the wiki, and instead of us having to, as a bunch of ourselves, trying to figure out what all these other people need us to present them, to just make sure that the word goes out somehow that they can do the same thing. Demonstrate what kind of teacher they are within the language and the culture that they represent. So I don't know how you find that. I'm sure Edwin knows that there's empathy teachers in other languages and other cultures.
Well, we have 2 languages here, German and English.
Well, it's kind of hard in France. They don't really speak English, and but it would be really great to roll this out internationally. And
but you mean as are offering translations of what we do internationally, or just finding international teachers?
No, finding some persons from these different cultures who would like to take part in this project and bring their own input and how this can be, for example. What Rosenberg, for example, wrote how he, as an American, went to the Middle East to do his workshops there, and the experiences he had there. So somebody from the Middle East would be nice to actually take part in that, or somebody from. I mean, we have Xuan, but she lives in the United States, so I don't know how much Americanized she is already. But somebody from China or Russia or all these different cultures, and I think they need to be from that country.
Kathy?
I didn't mean to stop you. I guess just holding up a finger could be an interruption.
No, I don't have much problems with being interrupted. No problem.
I didn't know you were done. I just thought you were done. Sorry.
Yes, I was.
I'm hearing 2 different things there. One would be to purposefully invite people from many different cultures and have them be part, if they would want to come and speak in English, have them make sure we are inclusive in that way of making space. And there are cultures in America that are not represented either.
Oh, yes.
There's the effort of that. And the second way, so there's both to be done. One is involve them in the conversation and the planning. And the other is simply to find teachers and have them have their parallel website in their language for the people of their culture with the same 20-minute presentation so that people can choose teachers. Those are 2 different things. Is that clear? One is like you're here brainstorming with us in English, and the other would be a whole German curriculum where you and Hayo and Dieter, my focusing friends, and other people from Germany would be offering their curriculums or their teaching.
So that would mean rolling out the empathy salon as international model, so to speak. So you have empathy ambassadors, so to speak, who go to different countries and start something like that. Is that what you were suggesting in a way?
I was thinking maybe Edwin can just find them. People, there must be people just like us and just like you in Germany in every culture teaching about empathy. So I would say finding them. I don't know. I'm not so good at details. I'm a visionary, but it's true. I'm not too good at the how do you make it happen. I say, Edwin will make it happen.
Yeah, well, I noticed the delegation here of how all this is happening. Oh, here's a great idea. Edwin will make this happen. That's, I'm not quite sure about the empathy in that.
What I find, what I really liked, maybe we can look at that as a kind of an example. What Otto Scharmer and his group did with the Theory worldwide MOOC, which they launched in 2014, and they claimed they had 25,000 people all over the world listening. And maybe we can think something like that, you know.
Was it in English?
It was in English, but people from Africa, from India and South America, Brazil and Chile, they really had a lot of what they called hubs. They created hubs, and that network really worked all over the world. And of course, they had the edX. They had very powerful hardware backbone. Because they were state sponsored, they were sponsored by Harvard. They could use powerful servers, because to host 25,000 people and to roll this out, you need this kind of servers. But this kind of model worked really well for these Theory U workshops.
That's the vision, is to create a MOOC, basically. An empathy MOOC. So, and I see the Theory U is I took part in that training, as I know that you did too with your group. Is that you've got the material online, but you form a local group, and you go through the material with the resources from online. You see the videos, you share your material with other people around with the other groups. And the human-centered design courses are also like that. They have like over 100,000 people on those MOOCs. And in fact, there's one that I'm taking right now with the human-centered design. It's a train the trainers. So you start off with a 7-week course on human-centered design with your team. Then you do a 4-week. You can do a 4-week prototyping course. So it's an addition. And now they have a train the trainers. They give you all the material. They give you the slide deck for putting on a 1-day workshop. They give you a 75 slide presentation for doing an 8-hour 1-day workshop. They give you the scripts for every step, and it's just totally laid out for you. And all you have to do is kind of practice it, bring people to like 5 to 20 people together and do the presentation. It's like they just made it available. In fact, I'm doing a workshop with the group of facilitators. We're going to probably in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing it online. So we'll be going through to practice the whole workshop online together. And we're making the design challenge, because you always start with the design challenge of how do we create an empathy training. So I'm actually using their process and their course to get a group of 7 to 9 folks together to use the process to begin designing trainings and so forth. So anybody here is welcome to take part in that. It'll probably be on a Saturday in 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, I would love to.
Oh great, I'll send you the info on that.
And so you're going to YouTube those?
I'm going to record them. Yep, we're going to record them. It's going to be recording the whole day, 7 hours of training. So we're out of time here, so maybe we could go around and just hear maybe a 30-second wrap-up from each person before we close, if anybody...
I am overstimulated. I am stimulated by the new friends and colleagues. I mean, that's funny, right? But thank you. I'm really in a good way. I'm overstimulated in a good way. I see a lot of possibilities here. I see, you know, possibilities for making a difference in the matter of empathy and related, which is my commitment. So my thanks to one and all. I acknowledge your all empathy. And I look forward to engaging with you, like one-on-one, you know, email. I need to get out more. I mean, full disclosure, I just heard of Otto Sharma Theory U just now. I know about MOOCs. I know about Harvard, but, you know, it's big servers. But, you know, so there's a lot of value. Thank you.
So, and I would like to thank you, Edwin, for your incredible energy around bringing people together. And it's been a great pleasure to meet other people who are doing similar or aligned work. And I do look forward to future involvement, whatever that might look like. So, deep gratitude to everybody for the caring and energy you're putting out into the world.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm also very happy. I've learned a lot in these 2 hours, and I'm very happy that Edwin, you connected me to all these wonderful persons and to yourself. And I'm also I didn't expect to have such a great laugh. Thanks for that. And I'm really looking forward to engaging with all of you in different compassions, and I'm really looking forward to learn more about you and learn from you. And I'm looking really forward to pushing this project forward.
Thanks.
I'll go.
Yeah.
My only regret, everything that Edwin has brought me into has put me in touch with wonderful people. Firstly, that I wish I'd met everyone 30 years ago, so I wouldn't have felt so alone in my own struggle. My only regret is that I don't become a community with all of you. I just love community. I feel a little thread going out from me to each one. This can make me cry here. I love crying. Being touched and being moved is what I call it. I feel a little thread going out to each one, and the other people I met at the other salon, and the people, and I hate to have those threads go away. But right now I've committed myself to write some self-help books and put myself in seclusion and do that. And then I have to travel in Europe in the summer. So I'm not available to really make community in that way until September of 2017. But that is my only regret. My deepest longing is to stay connected. And the kind of intellectual and heart stimulation that has come from our sharing is just mind-blowing. And everybody needs that kind of mind-blowing in their life, I guess. So that's my only regret, is the threads that'll, you know, get dropped, and changing that in the future somehow, building a community among teachers. So.
Oh, great. Well, we've had a real connection. I've really enjoyed our connection, Kathy. And it seems we keep dialoguing, and it's really meaningful for me as it is connecting with everyone else here and making new friends. I know Lou and Andrea and Sascha, we're starting to connect here, so I'm really looking forward to maintaining and deepening that. And for me, it's like the first step in this is to create a dialogue, and I think that's what we're doing here. This is just the first step. We could deepen it more with doing empathic listening or using empathic inquiry, but we'll be setting up next steps. Perhaps it'll be the trainers giving presentations. I think that's kind of where the energy was. We'll find other ways, too, of moving this forward. So I want to thank you all for taking part, and for our viewers for watching and looking forward to a lot of gratitude.
Mhm.
Looking forward to the next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin.